What it do, flight crew? FTC. Flight team stand up! We got some so fresh, so clean educationalists. I still ain't sober. It is now October. November's coming around the corner, y'all. We don't gotta force a November quote, but we do not have one so far. The most liked, requested one will be used for November. The scariest dinosaur you've never heard of. Now, if you guys ain't been sleeping under a rock and you're really tapped into Dut Reacts, dinosaurs are one of my favorite things that I learned about in school. With that being said, I kind of find it hard to believe that there is no dinosaur that I haven't heard of. And I'm not buying it. And by the way, we do have a pop quiz this week. Last week, I let y'all get, y'all really gonna sit up here and complain, bro. I let y'all last week get no quiz. And y'all really gonna sit there and sigh and pout. 7-question quiz. Make sure y'all lock in and pay attention, man. I already know the holidays is coming up. You got Halloween, you know what I'm saying? So your other teachers is giving you like 30, 40 question, you know what I'm saying, tests. I'm not even doing the most. The least you can do is just pay attention, all right? Let's check it out. It stinks out.
The first hybrid dinosaur in this series, the Indominus Rex, which was a proprietary blend of a variety of animals and dinosaurs. Then, not so long after, we got our second hybrid in Fallen Kingdom, the Indoraptor, or as it's sometimes nicknamed, the Indominus Raptor. A horror movie-worthy creation that enjoyed the perks of a body much larger than what's seen in most real dromaeosaurs, but still retaining a crazy level of agility, a sickle toe claw, and perhaps the hardest to miss, a set of Slender Man-like arms equipped with claws that would put Freddy Krueger to shame. And while it may be smaller than the Indominus Rex, this wombo combo of features certainly makes it a bit creepier, despite sharing many similarities. And it's no mystery why these two creatures share some aspects, as the Indoraptor itself was pretty much inspired by the question of what would happen if you combine the Indominus Rex with a real Velociraptor. But as it so turns out, we don't have to ask that question, because nature kind of already answered it for us, just a really, really long time ago, about 150 million years ago to be exact. As it was then during the Mesozoic that a family of theropods emerged who were strikingly similar in appearance to the Indoraptor, but were in some ways even more bizarre and arguably more deadly. These were the Megaraptorans. Like the Indoraptor, this group is shrouded in secrecy and mystery thanks to their minimal fossil record. And to date, researchers can't even agree on where they come from or what they are. But there is no argument that they would have made for the perfect Jurassic Park villains, as each one followed the same nightmarish body plan, which included this. What you're seeing here isn't a giant sickle claw on some supersized raptor's foot, but a hand of all things. And it belonged to the Megaraptor, the holotype for the family and the first Megaraptoran to be discovered, being unearthed in Argentina before the turn of the century.
Really?
And as its name suggests, paleontologists thought they had originally found a gigantic raptor, based on its massive claw, which they believed to have belonged to a foot. However, we now know that this was a hand claw that sat on its first finger, and that it measured a whopping 30 centimeters or 12 inches, making it about the same length as the longest Bowie knives in existence, or just as long as your typical ruler. This also meant that the Megaraptor literally had the longest claws of any predatory animal ever, a title that would only be beaten by none other than one of its own, as over the next 2 decades, many new genera belonging to this family were discovered, with a few being even scarier than their predecessor. And now the total number of Megaraptorans sits at 11 different genera, and crazily enough, these additional discoveries wound up teaching us that Megaraptorans' iconic weapons were somehow much more lethal than first thought, as these theropods didn't just have one built-in sword, but 2, as their second finger had their own enlarged recurved claws that were just like the first.
So it grows back.
i.e., shockingly sharp and very long. And what's crazy is that their claws were likely even longer in real life, as they were most likely covered in a keratinous sheath that might have added an additional 30% in length. And now, while the third finger did not have giant claws like the first and second, it was still razor sharp and powerful. But what made these claws truly deadly wasn't only their shape and size, but also what backed them up, so to speak, as Megaraptorans had robust and proportionally large arms and hands that would have given theropods like the Tyrannosaurus Rex some pretty major insecurities. These arms were roped in thick muscles,
a T-Rex having insecurities,
in a way that made them durable and highly flexible, allowing Megaraptorans to freely maneuver their weapons around with speed, and letting them be used as either a sword or spear, depending on
so they basically was like Wolverine, if you know, from Marvel.
Which in both cases would lead to catastrophic flesh wounds and massive internal damage. And even the death of the victim wouldn't have stopped the claw's onslaught, since
Sheesh.
researchers think that Megaraptorans likely use their claws to rake carcasses and tear bodies apart, allowing them to access hard-to-reach meat and disembowel their food. Now at this point I could stop here and still have it be plenty clear on why it would suck to be hunted by Megaraptorans. Yet this isn't the full picture. Oh no. As to truly understand the extent of their brutality, we have to talk about prey body size. You see, if a dinosaur was large enough, it's thought that Megaraptorans would have hunted it by using giant fatal claw strikes and slashes to bring it down, before dicing their victim up into smaller edible pieces. This sounds bad enough, however this is actually the lesser of two evils. As for smaller dinosaurs, including what would be human-sized ones, the Megaraptorans did something much more unpleasant. They would first catch their prey, grip them, and pierce them like a shish kebab with their giant hooks, and then while they were still possibly alive, eat them. Kind of like a person eating a piece of pizza, only that the pizza's alive, has been impaled, and is definitely screaming.
Nah, that's demonic as hell, bro. I definitely ain't hear about that dinosaur. I was gonna say, it looked familiar by the way the dinosaur was built, maybe from like old Jurassic Parks or something like that I watched. But nah, bro, that sounds actually genuinely demonic. Basically, bro, the dinosaur likes to eat you while you're alive and saying your last words. And then it takes its final bite when it's like, you know, you get your last little nibble bite of something. That's when, you know what I'm saying, it's lights out for you. Now, that is actually very scary.
This is a possibility, as Megaraptorans all had hyper-flexible and well-developed shoulders that were unlike anything seen in most predators, implying a wide range of motion and the ability to lift things upwards towards their waiting mouths.
Wow.
And despite not being as deadly as their horrendous claws, their mouths were no joke either, and in some ways were actually more interesting. Because unlike most predators that have similar teeth to their relatives, the Megaraptorans had vastly different ones among them, each seeming to take inspiration from other notorious dinosaurs. For example, the Megaraptor had similar frontal teeth similar to those seen in Tyrannosauroids, being chisel-like and having a D-shaped cross-section. Meanwhile, the Raptor's front teeth were like fangs of all things. It got weirder though, as others, such as the Straulovinator and Orcaraptor, had teeth more like Compsognathids and Dromaeosaurs, with the front sides being smooth and flat, while the backs were serrated and designed to cut. And the mimicking continued with the Fukuiraptor, who might have had the least visually appealing teeth of them all, with its laterally compressed blade-like dentition, which highly resembled the Carcharodontosaurus, who, as you may know, is rather well known for possessing shark-like teeth. Now what's interesting is that studies have shown that Megaraptorans probably couldn't bite down or open their mouths with that much force. But given just how efficiently designed their teeth were, that wasn't really an issue to having a deadly bite, especially when you remember that the arms already had more than enough killing potential as it was. It's here in the teeth that the Megaraptorans also arguably get a win over the Indoraptor, because despite the Indoraptor's teeth looking kind of scary, they were quite small and designed more for gripping rather than tearing or puncturing. And nature's own monstrosities take the prize in size as well, because of all the members we know of, the closest to the stature of the Indoraptor would have been the Erosteon, an Argentinian genus who weighed 1.1 tons and measured 7.5 meters or 25 feet, nearly identical to the stats of Dr. Wu's creation. But the crazy thing is that this is actually considered to be on the medium size for this family, not large, as they could get much bigger. In fact, nearly half of the Megaraptorans were larger than an Indoraptor, with the Orcaraptor, Megaraptor, and the Trataenia all being over 8 meters in length. And at this size, some of them were the largest predators in their environment, and a few achieved some even more impressive feats, as currently the largest Australian theropod is thought to have been a Megaraptoran, a fitting animal for a country well known for their messed up wildlife. Still, it wasn't in Australia that you would find the largest member, far from it. As to meet a real giant, you'd have had to travel back to late Cretaceous Argentina, where if you were seriously unlucky, you would have encountered the Maipe. Yes, you heard that right, the Maipe. But let me tell you, this somewhat funny sounding name does not do it justice, as in reality, nothing about this giant theropod was comedic, especially for its prey.
Damn, they basically was like, don't be playing with me just at my name.
Member in its family, but it was also a massive theropod in general, with recovered bones suggesting a length of up to 10 meters or 33 feet, longer than the length seen in the biggest conclusive Allosaurus specimens. At this size, Maipe was no doubt the biggest and baddest theropod in Argentina, and it likely preyed upon pretty much everything, including a variety of ankylosaurs, hadrosaurs, and ornithopods. It might have even been able to hunt a coexisting titanosaur, the Titan, by using its massive claws to tear and grip it, while its mouth could then be used to deal additional damage. And while no claw belonging to this beast has been found yet, researchers estimate, based on its closest living relatives, that they were at least 37.5 centimeters or 15 inches long, giving it the title of the predator with the largest claws, even when including Freddy Krueger in the running. And this is a notion that is adequately reflected by its name, which while may not sound intimidating in English, actually has a very sinister meaning, as it references a creature in Aunakake mythology known as the Shadow of Death that kills with cold wind. So yeah, coming through a forest clearing and seeing one of these guys, or really any Megaraptoran for that matter, would have been a heart-thumping moment. But what might really stop your heart is seeing one start to run, because the moment it lifted its foot, you'd suddenly realize that they were much faster than they should have been, and there's a reason for that. Many dinosaurs have hollow or pneumatized bones, meaning they were filled with air pockets, but in Megaraptorans, this pneumatization was taken to an extreme level. So extreme that only one other theropod is known to rival their hollowness, and that's the Neovenator. And what's interesting is that all of their bones possess this characteristic, but the ilium, vertebrae, and ribs were especially hollow, which together made Megaraptorans very light for their sizes. For example, the Megaraptor was only around 1 ton, while an Allosaurus of similar length might have been 50% heavier. And it got even crazier than this, as some like the Australovenator might have been no more than 310 kilos or 680 pounds, despite being over 6 meters or 20 feet in length, which leads some paleontologists to think that certain genera were the cheetahs of their time.
What?
This surprising lightness helped to think that certain genera were the cheetahs of their time.
There's a dinosaur that was colored like this?
This surprising lightness
That shit actually kind of is cool, but it looks,
helped turn this group into very agile and
why
speedy
is today the
killers,
first time I'm
kind
hearing
of like
about that?
prehistoric ninja with giant shukos, and would have let even the larger ones
Nigga,
chase
I ain't gonna lie. This dinosaur got some aura to it. I ain't gonna lie, bruh. It look like one of them rare Call of Duty gun skins that you get. You know what I'm saying? Like,
prey smaller
that
than
shit
themselves, and stage stealthy ambushes. Not to mention, they also had leg bones that were relatively slender and similar in construction to those seen in Coelurosaurs, implying yet again more adaptations meant for running. And no surprise, such a design worked wonderfully to the misfortune of others. But unfortunately for them, this others could even include themselves, as fossil records have shown. Specifically, a Merisraptor specimen, an Argentinian genus, was found with a severely infected brain case, which is thought to have originated from 2 different puncture marks on the side of its skull that lo and behold matched the teeth found in its own mouth, meaning it came from a rival. The extent of the infection was so severe that the team who studied the skull believed that there is a greater than 50% chance that the individual succumbed to its injuries. But it is this aggressive attitude combined with its build that ultimately allowed the Megaraptorans to establish an expansive dominion, with species being known from 3 different continents: Australia, Asia, and South America, with Argentina, Australia, Thailand, and Japan having been strongholds for members. In these countries, if you wanted to avoid running into one of these real-life Freddy Kruegers, you would have needed to steer clear from any sources of water, as Megaraptorans typically lived in wet environments, namely fluvial areas and coastlines, where prey would have been abundant and diverse. There's even some speculation that some members may have opportunistically hunted marine and semi-aquatic animals, such as crocodilians, large turtles, and big fish. In fact, once upon a time, paleontologists actually thought that hunting in the water was really the Megaraptorans' main way of acquiring food, with the idea that they use their large claws to ensnare and spear fish. But nowadays, based on all their other adaptations, it's believed to be an unlikely story, and there is near universal agreement that they were simply terrestrial hunters, who were many times the sole apex predators in their environment. However, this wasn't always the case, and fossil records indicate that they had quite the rivalry with Carcharodontosaurids, who were sometimes even bigger and specialized to tackle big game. This competition took place mainly in South America, and during it, the Megaraptorans preferred to play into their agility and speed, since it was only after the extinction of Carcharodontosauridae, 90 million years ago, that they underwent a rapid size increase. But funnily enough, despite their competition with the Carcharodontosauridae, they coincidentally shared a similar brain case shape and design, leading to some thinking that the two had comparable intelligence levels. Now, admittedly, Carcharodontosaurids are no Indoraptor when it comes to intelligence, but they have been compared to crocodiles, who despite misconceptions can actually be quite smart, and are known to occasionally set traps, coordinate, and even once in a while use tools to lure prey. So that's all to say, if any of this rubbed off on the Carcharodontosauridae, and thereby Megaraptorans, neighboring herbivores would have been in for quite the nasty surprise. Despite this shared similarity and the two's close but questionable relationship, Megaraptorans are currently believed not to be part of the Carcharodontosauria, and actually, no one really knows what these enigmatic killers were. Obviously they have their own family, but to which group of theropods they belong to is unknown. As their name suggests, originally paleontologists thought they were giant dromaeosaurs, but this has since been discarded since they don't have enlarged toe claws. Then they thought that Megaraptorans are part of the Neoventoridae, given the similar hollowed bones, but that didn't last either. And since then, two new schools of thought have emerged, with one side believing them to be Tyrannosauroids, meaning their closest relatives were possibly Tyrannosaurids, or they were simply non-Tyrannosauroid Coelurosaurs, which doesn't really tell us much either. And the mystery surrounding this group doesn't end with classification, as we also don't know where they come from. Currently, the best guess is that they originated in Asia, possibly during the final days of the Jurassic. From there, they wound up in Australia sometime in the early Cretaceous. After that, they ended up doing very well and became highly diversified, eventually carrying on their conquest to South America, likely arriving there via Antarctica. So quite the explorers, on top of being the perfect killing machines. And actually, they were so good at being hunters and simply existing, that you could make the argument that Megaraptoran traits were more effective than what other theropods had. Because if you compare this group's survival time against others, it's basically a clean sweep. For example, Tyrannosauridae achieved an existence of about 16 million years, Spinosauridae 46 million, Carcharodontosauridae 64, Megalosauridae 25 million, and you get
that dinosaur look crazy though.
Meanwhile, the Megaraptorans clocked
how the fuck they get their color like that?
84 million years, making them among the longest-lived dinosaur groups, period. And opposed to some animals that tend to get smaller through time, it seems that they only got scarier and more overpowered, as the last iteration and surviving member happened to be the biggest and arguably the most deadly. And of course, I'm talking about the Maip itself. And when you have a family as messed up as this, it really makes you wonder, how did they even go extinct?
A broken dinosaur family home is crazy.
Well, it turns out that Mother Nature herself couldn't get the job done, because like the non-avian dinosaurs as a whole, the Megaraptorans were only wiped out after a giant meteor slammed into the Earth 66 million years ago, bringing an end to all non-avian dinosaurs and the last of the Megaraptorans.
It's like every time I hear about the meteor Big Bang Theory with ending the dinosaurs, bro, like, doesn't that ever, like, get you wondering, like, dog, that shit can happen any given day. Like, if that happens right now, everything that humanity has built for the last 100 to 200 years is wiped away and life restarts, and nobody would have any records of it. Internet is all wiped out clean because that's all the satellites and stuff like that. Like, do you ever sit down and think that, like, do you really think this Big Bang Theory really happened? Or did the dinosaurs just genuinely, like, found less and less dinosaurs to reproduce with and they just all died out naturally? I feel like what's more, okay, here's my take. I kind of do believe that, but I'm a lot more like on the side of just like, because there's also another theory too where it's just like, not global warming, because that's already happening obviously right now, but in terms of like, I feel like maybe, in my opinion, the world probably got over flooded in certain areas, and some dinosaurs that weren't like sea creatures and stuff are able to survive in the water. You know what I'm saying? They just ended up dying out. Because it makes sense to how like fish and stuff like that, basic fish like a tuna, that stuff's been around since the dinosaurs, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, right? They're able to survive. Sharks, same thing. You know what I'm saying? Okay, now for like the megalodons, they'll be like, okay, how did the megalodons die out if that's the case with the water? I feel like megalodons ate dinosaurs like this that you see on the screen. You know what I'm saying? Like brontosauruses and T-Rexes and shit like that. What is a great white shark gonna do with a megalodon? They eating their own people. They can't do that. That's cannibalism in their eyes. Feel me? But what is y'all's take on that, man? Do y'all really believe that Big Bang Theory like that? Or do you think maybe the dinosaurs died off in a whole different way in the aspect?
And to this day, we're still waiting for a new one.
Because, bro, it gets to a point. Y'all got all this technology developing, and we still haven't got 100% confirmation that it was these meteors or asteroids that, you know what I'm saying, made all the dinosaurs like die off. I personally think, like I said, now, especially being at 30 now, like, okay, maybe the world, I feel like at one point over flooded before it went back down to the normal levels. And then also, you know, in a combination of them not having enough other dinosaurs to reproduce with. And, you know, what happens, it just all die.